Light shapes and outlines the extant world. The image, as collected by the retina, gives to us the visual boundaries of the objective. We are biological recorders, raised up through the millennia to perceive and be perceived, to know and to be known by and of the bodies that surround us. When, in the course of our development, did we choose to be makers of history, to, in C.S. Peirce's words, index the bodies and the experience of being real in the place? When did we choose to paint our hands and bodies and beasts on walls, and to what end? When did we choose to count those beasts in the herd, or the horns on the beasts, and why did we come back to the same walls again and again and again, to document the new, or, even stranger, to record the imagined? What is this built-in obsession with the icon, the simultaneous symbolic abstraction and proof of the real? André Bazin thought those two aspects were no farther apart than the other side of the page. It is true that painting, the world over, has struck a varied balance between the symbolic and realism, he asserted in the ontology of the photographic image. He went on. In the 15th century, Western painting began to turn from its age-old concern with spiritual realities expressed in the form proper to it, towards an effort to combine this spiritual expression with as complete an imitation as possible of the outside world. Here begins the transition to perspective, Bazin's original sin. From this point to modernity, the painter has suddenly been handed not a new task, but one now sharply defined: the pursuit of objective truth. As centuries wear on, the artist and consumer of art felt ever-mounting tension between the essential totality of the real and the illusory superficial of the fooled eye, or in simpler terms, the objective and the deceptive. We see the breaking of this tension, or at least a détente, with the advent of the plate photograph. By removing human hand and eye from the capture of the image, we too remove the shadow of the doubt. Photography, which is possessed, in Bazin's words, of an essential objectivity, and improved, unlike all the other plastic arts, by man's absence, becomes the standard bearer of the objective, as well as the irrational bearer away of our faith. When comparing the two, it is the mechanical reproduction which affects us the way that nature does, where the brain and eyes are given the index, and so too the real thing, remade, represented, represented in two dimensions, which seems to be enough to confer some shadow of the innate reality of the object by the image making onto the image made. If this mechanical process is benefited by the absence of the human, then can we not add another link to the chain? If the image capture is free of influence, can we not also say that the process and development should also be free of the guiding hand? In Bazin's writings, the credibility of the image and of the index is the beneficiary of the automatic capture. This, though, is not the limit of human disinvolvement. With Edwin Land's instant camera, or any of its self-contained photochemical progeny, we further abstract the human intervention in the process and further reinforce the objective credibility of the image. The light, and therefore the boundaries of the image, are inscribed on the negative, which in turn passes its form to the contact print, creating a singular index, a moment in amber, untouched and unchanged by the subjective hand of the artist or mechanic. From here, unlike traditional film negatives or plates, no true copies can be made without substantial effort. Any duplicate of the print will be a second-order copy, a copy of a copy, and so on. Likewise, no equivalent can be rendered from the negative in the traditional method, or even the traditional sense. This process is as purely objective as the photographic minds of 2 centuries have managed, and likely ever will. Or so one would be led to believe. In truth, the oversimplification of the nature of objectivity of the photograph is the foundation of the arguments in favor of the treatment of the photograph as liberator or destroyer of artistic realism, as well as being an oversimplification of the effect of the process itself. Today, the development and prevalence of the digital image adds complication, but few new arguments on either side of the indexical divide. Fundamentally, conservative scholars would have us believe that Peirce would say what he always has, that photographs, especially instantaneous photographs, are very instructive because we know they are in certain respects exactly like the objects that they represent. But this model fails to function in a world where light is stored as ones and zeros, ever present and ever malleable. There is no amber to preserve the index, and no guarantee of the accuracy of representation in those arranged bits. Some would say this flies in the face of the truth claim, as Tom Gunning and others put it, negating the inherent trustworthiness of the photographic index. As Gunning writes, however, the apparatus, in itself, can neither lie nor tell the truth. And later, a photograph can only tell the truth if it is also capable of telling a lie. Even if we, by habit, believe in the objectivity of the photograph, the truth claim is and can only be a claim made, to be allowed, defended, or cross-examined by the viewer. Where the conservatives go wrong is the notion that this new watershed in photographic history is somehow more revolution than evolution. The manipulated photograph has nearly as long a history as the unmanipulated, and it could be argued a richer one. What is more, the manipulator relies on what Gunning calls the social value of photography's truth claim, making widespread digital untruth its own enemy by ensuring that even these manipulators have a stake in the perceived veracity of the medium. But even with the by now well-developed arguments against the index of the digital photograph, or what some would prefer to call the digital image, what do we stand to gain? Access to and diffusion of information are fundamental features of the digital media, and in the age of broadband, the sharing of images is concurrently dream and nightmare for the photographic artist, depending largely on their profit acumen. The barrier to access is functionally negated, and cell phone cameras become in many ways like their instant photochemical predecessors, producing, processing, and distributing the image with only some little interference by their users. Social media become social mediums for the storage of time via images that may have lost their unquestioned objectivity in the minds of some scholars, but by no means have lost their indexical status for viewers. These massively distributed versions of Bazin's Lives Halted at a Set Moment have become large-scale objective documentary. With the news of Fujifilm's discontinuation of their last remaining stock for Land's most objective device, it is important to look closely at the way the image maker shapes the medium itself. The shared digital image is a continuation and development of its analog predecessor, and in a time when both are still in use, it is tempting for some scholars to draw a sharp line between the two. However, we must be wary of what Emily Keightley and Michael Pickering call technological essentialism. With the advent of new mediums for image making comes a sudden need to find where the new departs from the old, and to imagine that those features are immutable characteristics of the medium. If nothing else, the transition from analog to digital photograph shows how little has really changed. While the singular digital image is viewed as less unique and lacking somewhat the sense of personal possession invested in them by the maker, we devote massive technological and physical resources to the storing and sharing of these images. The analog print is digitized via scanner, and the digital is objectified via printer. All the while, the image making continues unabated, with the image maker blissfully unaware of their supposed sudden loss in objectivity. Bazin wrote that the need for illusion has not ceased to trouble the heart of painting since the 16th century. It is a purely mental need, of itself non-aesthetic, the origins of which must be sought in the proclivity of the mind towards magic. Now, after 150 years or more, at the precipice of the beginning of the end of the instant photograph and the end of the beginning of the digital, why do we seem to think that we must resist that need? Where once the photographic index lay without the artist and image maker, as the object of the objective, that index can now be seen as icon, record and proof of the unique subjectivity within. With the advent and dispersion and possibilities of the digital image, even the pure mechanical process of the instant photograph becomes in a sense free of Bazin's obsession with likeness. Just like a painting.